Hello, warriors and supporters. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again for another great episode of CWF Presents CRPS/RSD is Real, Episode 12. Today we have attorney Michael Bender with us to discuss some of the legal situations that can surround the diagnosis of CRPS. When we think about legal circumstance and CRPS, a lot of us automatically think of workers' comp cases. But what about financial hardship that warriors experience not being able to work consistently in the time period that they go through while waiting for disability or waiting for workers' comp cases? Today we're going to learn about some of the options that warriors have. So without any further ado, enjoy episode 12.
Hello and welcome. My name is Kimberly. I'm a CRPS warrior and the operations assistant with the CRPS Warriors Foundation. Today we're talking to Michael about bankruptcy and how to remove the stigma and how it can really help those of us with CRPS who are in a rough financial situation of no fault of our own because we got this horrible condition. So I think the first question that I want to talk to you about, Michael, is how can bankruptcy help those of us with CRPS?
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic question to go ahead and start us off. And I appreciate you having me on the podcast here. One of the major things that we look at in bankruptcy, and I think it's got to go back to start with getting rid of the stigma of bankruptcy. A lot of people fear bankruptcy. They look at bankruptcy. They look at it as, the scarlet letter, all that. If I remember back to my, was it middle school or high school English class, whatever the book that was. Just this stigma that's going to be attached with bankruptcy. But the realization the realization needs to be is that bankruptcy is there to actually help people get out of the situation that they're in. And for those that have CRPS, the big issue that they're going to confront and what they're looking at is the medical debt that can be incurred. And that has a domino effect on their entire situation. Medical debt in and of itself, various treatments, the doctor visit after doctor visit, that type of stuff. Health insurance, it's going to pay something, but cover everything. So a lot of resources going toward the financial resources of an individual going towards that is going to have that domino effect on the rest of their life. And really, where else are they going to be able to allocate their finances? And if they're able to pay their medical debt, if that is, has to be the priority there, what else are they not able to pay? What else are they having to use credit for? Building up that credit card debt just to live day to day. So that's really one of the main issues when we look at bankruptcy is how one area of somebody's life really just affects everything. Affects that increase of digging the hole and not being able to get out of it.
Yeah, and a lot of times when there's patients with CRPS, like me, I'm a small business owner. I got CRPS, and it's very difficult for me to even have an income because my income was based on me working.
Absolutely.
So like you're accruing all this medical debt and all these expenses and then not having the income that you had before because you're not physically capable of doing what you were able to do before.
Absolutely. That's one of the things, like I said, the domino effect here really is pervasive. When you look at the inability, as a small business owner, you are reliant on your ability to bring in that income to do the job that you need to do to create that. And if that's not there, because the CRPS is just it is so debilitating and forcing that inability to work, now you have to rely on something else, credit, basically right, to get that day to day. Go to the store and get groceries. That's really what the big issue is.
Yeah. So if there's people listening that don't know what bankruptcy is there kind of like a definition that you could give so that before we keep going, they have a good idea of what it is so they're not confused?
Absolutely. Go ahead and start with the basics. Bankruptcy is basically that tool to get a fresh financial start. A lot of people think bankruptcy is, just go ahead, I've run up all this debt, I can just file for bankruptcy and my debt is gone. Well, it's not that simple. There's different types of bankruptcies that consumers can do, either a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13. A Chapter 7 is getting rid of all the debt, basically wiping it away, but you have to qualify for that based upon income, as well as looking at assets and protecting assets. Chapter 13 is a payback. It's basically up to 5 years, month over month over month, of paying back all or a portion of the debt. But what happens is when your bankruptcy case is done, when you get this discharge of debt, yes, you emerge debt-free. So it's basically that's this. You get the financial fresh start, but you have to take advantage of that in the sense of, hey, let's do things the right way. Let me prepare for the future so I'm not in this situation again. Yes, I no longer have any debt. How do I make the most of that situation so I don't dig myself into a bigger hole next time? And it's unfortunate. About 8% of the people who file for bankruptcy wind up filing again. But if you can get that financial fresh start, if you are able to say, okay, here's the money that I'm making, here's how I can go ahead and prepare for the future, bankruptcy gives you that opportunity to just do a reset on your finances and really emerge from having all this debt to a better financial future.
Okay. I think a lot of that information, unfortunately, people don't know about. It's not readily available necessarily. And if people are free and clear of debt, then where do they go from there? Would be great information too, I think, because if people don't already know that, they could, like you said, just go back into the same cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when we talk about people don't know about bankruptcy, what people know about is what they hear about in the media, in what they see online, what they just what's commonplace. I mean, you hear these horror stories of these celebrities. They're going to jail because they committed bankruptcy fraud or they filed for bankruptcy, but they were just irresponsible. Sometimes people are irresponsible. Sometimes people have that fraud, but getting that picture out of somebody's mind is the most important thing. And then, yes, it goes to the, okay, what do I do from here? I see a lot of misconceptions online. Part of a handful of Facebook groups where people ask a lot of questions about bankruptcy and have a lot of misconceived notions about bankruptcy, which they'll even ask about the after the bankruptcy, and there's still a lot of misconceived perceptions out there. Well, how am I ever going to buy a house again? Well,
right.
Rebuild credit. It's take the right steps, get the education. I know my firm, we actually provide our clients with an education course. You have to take an education course or a credit counseling course within going through bankruptcy. I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's just very basic. So we've actually created one that goes in depth to create more of the, well, let's create a budget. Let's figure out how we're going to do this. And what do we need to set aside? What is it that, for big component is that emergencies. There's many other programs out there that are provided. People just have to seek out and go, oh, okay, I have this golden opportunity now. How do I make the best of my situation?
Yeah, I think that's so important. Thank you for doing that for people. And I really agree with that whole stigma of bankruptcy, because that really, I think, could prevent people from seeking counseling about it. Because removing that stigma is really important if it can benefit you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the compound effect here. Adding this stress to that stress to that stress, which is only going to worsen somebody's just overall financial, emotional, physical situation. It's, hopefully we can talk about today, what we can stress today is the bankruptcy option is there to take away stress. Going through a bankruptcy, okay, it can be stressful. There's a lot of information that's collected, but every client that we've talked to after a bankruptcy has occurred, after they get their discharge, it's that big sigh of relief. Okay, I don't have to worry about this anymore. I can refocus my life. That's actually one of the big things that we stress in our message about bankruptcy is take away that financial stress, because that financial stress is having an effect on all those other areas of your life. That physical well-being, you can feel it. I don't know all the medical reasons, but when you have that stress, your body is going to react to that, and you're not going to get better. You're not going to be at wherever you can be in maximum performance there. It's also going to affect your emotional state, and that emotional state has ramifications on all of the relationships that you have, whether it's with a spouse, friends, family, kids. If we look at bankruptcy and take away that financial stress, we can help people move forward in repairing those other areas of their life.
That's awesome. That's a really good point, because it is just stress compounded, and then it really does affect all areas of your life. Removing as much stress as you possibly can is the most beneficial for anyone who's trying to heal. So as a novice of bankruptcy, do you have to hit a certain number of debt to be able to, or is it based on your assets, or how does someone know that, oh, this might be an option for me?
That's an excellent question, and a question we get quite often. There is no magical number that somebody should have in debt before we say, okay, yeah, you need to file bankruptcy, or you qualify for bankruptcy. If you have any debt, you can qualify. Now, it is very, very much an individual situation. I'm not going to throw out numbers, but if there's a low amount of debt, but there's really no income, little income, it may make sense. If my situation is going to improve, what's going to be my best course of action? If you have a lot of debt, but you are able to maintain a healthy income, it may not make sense. And then you mentioned the assets issue of it as well. So I talked about Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 before. And assets come into play in both of those chapters, the ability to file for bankruptcy, because when we look at Chapter 7 is actually called a liquidation of assets.
Okay.
So typically, let's just say you have assets that can't be protected. I'll talk about protection in just a second. The U.S. trustee is going to come in and sell those assets or capture bank accounts and so forth and pay off creditors. But most Chapter 7 cases, even if people have things, they're considered a no asset case because there's the ability to protect their assets. Bankruptcy is not there. It's not meant to take everything somebody has and make them destitute just for the benefit of those creditors. The protection of the assets through what are called exemptions, people actually get to keep things. And that's going to vary by state, the amount. I'm located in Southern California. We have very generous exemptions, particularly when it comes to houses. If people have equity in houses, yes, you can file for bankruptcy and keep your house. Vehicles, bank accounts, retirement accounts, these things can be kept based upon the available exemptions. So we talk about qualification, we look at those exemptions, we look at those assets. Okay, are we going to look at a 7? Can we protect everything? Do you qualify? Because there's an income aspect of it. Looking at those assets, if there's too many assets, they're either going to be sold in a bankruptcy, or you can look potentially in Chapter 13, which, like I mentioned before, is a payback of the assets. One final thing on the qualifications, actually one of the first things we look at, is that income issue. To automatically qualify for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and that Chapter 7 is really that one that everybody associates with consumer bankruptcy. Go in, okay, debt be gone. You actually have to qualify based on your income. It's based upon your household size. So it's based upon the state median income. There's charts. There's charts online that even attorneys have to go and look at. But that's the automatic qualifications, basically income based upon the household size, it goes up. And if you don't qualify under that, you can actually do what's called a means test. We get a lot of questions. Oh, am I going to have to, or I see a lot of questions online too. What's this means test thing? Am I going to have to qualify through the means test? Well, you use that means test to look at what that disposable income is based upon various types of debts that you would have to pay back. And that's a qualification too, but that's a whole nother discussion. So really, those are the qualifications to get into a Chapter 7. If you don't qualify for the Chapter 7, then we look at, okay, where do you fit into a Chapter 13 and how much of that debt you're going to be paying back?
Okay. That makes sense. It helps me understand it a little bit better. Where does, this might be a weird question, but if you don't have the assets to pay back the money, where does the money go to the creditors? Do they just have to swallow that, or is there legally take the debt and remove it because you're unable to pay it?
Yeah, really, that's a really good question. Basically, what happens to that debt? And it's gone. They essentially can no longer take any action to collect on that debt. Now, this is unsecured debt. If it's secured, say a mortgage or a lien on a vehicle, that type of stuff, that they can still go after. In most cases, of course, this is coming from the legal aspect of it. There's sometimes that's not the situation, so there's caveats there. But in most situations, if there's that lien, that's going to most of the time, well, we call survive the bankruptcy and then be able to still be collected. But as far as from the creditor standpoint, if their debt is discharged, they can no longer call, they can no longer do any wage garnishments, they can't sue, they can't levy bank accounts and so forth. It basically becomes a write-off of debt on their P&L, and they just can't collect it anymore. It no longer exists, basically.
Okay, so unsecured, you're talking like credit cards, personal loans, maybe that kind of a thing, hospital bills, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. It's those things that you're personally responsible for, where they're not, there's no lien filed against any property that you have. Now, once something, if you're sued and becomes a judgment, various states allow it to be attached to property. But really, we try and get people through a bankruptcy, file for a bankruptcy, because as soon as a case is filed, they cannot take any action to collect it. So, but yeah, so it's those things that you're personally responsible for.
Okay. So, what is the process like? So, someone comes to you and they say they want to talk to you about filing for bankruptcy. What are the first steps you do? Like you said, if you file, then they can't collect at that point. How long does the whole process take?
Good question. Our firm, the way that we handle things, it's very step-by-step process. We actually have a 3-step process that we do in preparation to get somebody filed. First step, we meet with them, we discuss their situation, that determination. Hey, are you going to qualify? If you're not going to qualify, what does that Chapter 13 look like? And then the debtor needs to provide a lot of information. Like we talked about, we need to look at all aspects of income. And income just doesn't necessarily just mean that W-2 income that you're receiving, or what you're reporting if you're a solo, or if you have a small business, what's on that K-1. And there's a lot of aspects of what income actually is. So we gather all that information. We gather all the information about the assets and all the information about the debts. So our clients will give us that. We do the full analysis and make sure that we can protect everything, make sure that all their debt will go away. And then we prepare it to be filing, come in, have our clients review everything, and we get it filed. And as soon as, like we mentioned, as soon as it is filed, any creditor out there has to stop any action until either the case goes away, meaning they don't follow through with it, or let's say it's a secured asset, they can actually ask the court for the ability to continue even while the case is going. Rarely, most of our clients aren't in that situation. We either protected the asset or they're going to keep that asset and continue paying on that secured debt. And then the whole bankruptcy, the Chapter 7 bankruptcy process, once it's filed, only takes about 4 or 5 months. Everybody's fearful. They have a meeting with the U.S. trustee. Really, if everything's been done correctly, because we provide all the information to that U.S. trustee well in advance, or to the trustee, I should say, in advance. They ask questions. They have a list of questions, about a dozen questions. Essentially, is all the information in your petition correct? If they have any questions about the property, about the debt, about your job, that type of stuff, who's living in the house, where's your stuff, and we provided all that ahead of time. 2-3 minutes later, that meeting is done. Sometimes it could last a little bit longer, but if everything's done correctly, big sigh of relief after that meeting, and then you just wait for the case to be closed. Basically, it's wait for deadlines to be hit for the court, and case is done, debt is discharged. That's in chapter 7. And like I meant, chapter 13, fairly similar, but then you just have to make those monthly payments over the next 60 months.
Okay. So if someone says, I don't want to deal with this, I just have all the debt on my credit card and I'm going to make the payments when I can make the payments, would you try and persuade them to file for bankruptcy instead because of the way credit cards, the interest rates are? Or I'm just trying to think of a situation where people are like, oh, I don't want to deal with like the stigma or the idea that I have to do all this paperwork, and they decide to just hold off and all their debt is just going to keep accumulating. Like, how would you try and persuade them to maybe look into bankruptcy?
Well, I wouldn't use the word persuade.
Okay.
Really, what we do is we'll take them through all of their options. Bankruptcy is not somebody's only option. If they can come up with a way of paying off the debt, could be an option. If they can settle their debt, that could be an option. And we actually have various referral partners out there where somebody comes in and maybe they're not the best candidate for a bankruptcy. We'll refer them out to debt negotiation or debt settlement. I'm not a big fan of debt consolidation. There's many aspects to that really the debt consolidation companies, they're the only winners there. But the negotiations, the settlement, that can be a definite option. Or if they're not going to qualify for that, or they just really don't have the funds to be able to pay for it, they can go ahead and continue on. But what we're going to do is walk them through, what does this look like? If you have $20,000 of credit card debt, and let's say it's across 4 or 5 credit cards, average interest rate there is 20-25%, even upwards of 30% sometimes. We'll walk through that, and I can actually here's that example. If you have $20,000 of credit card debt, we just pull up a calculator online to walk them through it. Let's just say it's an average interest rate of 22%, and they want to pay that off within the next 5 years. I mean, they're looking at over $550 a month payment on that, with interest. And again, this is a calculator online. We just use it for information purposes, but it's over $13,000 of interest. Wow. Why would you want to pay over 30? That's not adding anything else. That's stopping to use the credit card. Yeah. So you're out over $550. You're out now over the next 5 years, over $13,000 of interest alone. We also look at, let's just say somebody's paying, I have $20,000 in debt. I'm paying $1,000 a month towards this. Calculate it again. Okay, that's going to take just over 2 years, and you're going to be paying over $5,000 of interest. In 2 years from now, if you get rid of that debt, you've saved the $20,000 principal, you've saved over $5,000 of interest, and you started to rebuild your credit. Doesn't bankruptcy look like a better option? Yeah. Now, again, I'm not trying to persuade. It's just an education component. Yeah. This is something that people don't think about. They don't see. Same thing with as far as the medical debt and the personal loans and all that type of stuff. Putting it in there, what's that? The late fees, the interest, and then if you're not paying what they want you to pay, they can sue you. And once that lawsuit goes through, you now have a lawsuit on your record. They're going to levy bank accounts. When I say levy, they basically can go out and clean out a bank account. They can garnish wages up to a certain percent, again, based upon the state. And then that's money you're just never going to see. So it's the education component to it. Really, what's this going to do? And the situation we're talking about here, as far as the credit card, pay it off in 2 years, fantastic. But if 6 months from now you're done with your bankruptcy, in the next 18 months, you go out and take the steps to rebuild your credit, you're going to be in a much better situation in 2 years than if you did pay that $1,000 a month. We actually, so one example that I had a couple, they were looking at buying a house in a couple of years. They had a significant amount of debt and they wanted to go ahead and continue to try and pay it off. And I actually brought in a mortgage broker to the office to sit down and talk with them and say, okay, if you continued in your current situation and you didn't pay off that debt, you probably wouldn't qualify for the loan. So you're not going to be able to buy that house. You're not going to be able to continue on and pay or continue with that dream. However, if you file for bankruptcy after 2 years from discharge, you can qualify for FHA, 4 years conventional. You don't have that $40,000 on the debt for the debt to income ratio. You can take the money that you were intending upon paying it off with, put that aside. Now you have money towards your down payment. Again, education. Here's an option. It's going to put me in a better situation.
Wow. So what happens to, like you're saying, you'll rebuild your credit after bankruptcy. So what does your credit look like after the bankruptcy is over?
So a lot of people are concerned about their credit score. Quite frankly, when somebody's going through bankruptcy, that should be the last thing on their mind. I see again in these Facebook groups, I filed, my credit score went up, then it went down, and it's all over the place. Look, coming out of bankruptcy, your credit score is going to be bad. Going into it is probably bad already. The key component is that rebuilding. 18 months, 24 months down the line. The credit score shows what is your credit worthiness. What is the likelihood that if a creditor gives you money, that you're going to pay it back? And if you actually show over the next 18 months, 24 months, and so on and so forth, that you are doing it the right way, you're making the payments, you are taking the right steps, your credit score is going to go up significantly. And likely be better where it is than where it is today. Because again, the credit score, the credit bureaus, what have you done lately? What is your situation now for me to give you money?
Okay. Is there anything, just trying to think of things that maybe people might have with the stigma of bankruptcy that would be questions that they might have. So if you have in your history that you filed for bankruptcy, does that prevent you from doing anything in the future?
So bankruptcy will stay on the credit report for 10 years.
10 years.
But again, what have you done lately? Have you taken advantage of that fresh start? Have you gone out, gotten a secured credit card? You go get a secured credit card, you make the payments on it, credit score is going to build. If you can purchase a vehicle afterwards. It's going to be a very high interest rate. Trust me, right after a bankruptcy, it's going to be a high interest rate. But those payments are reported to the credit bureaus. You're making the payments. You're doing better. Will it preclude somebody from doing something? I mean, there may be individuals out there that look at a credit report. Let's just say it's an individual landlord. I got somebody who filed for bankruptcy. I don't want them as a tenant. Possibly, but those are the one-offs. Again, when we look at credit score, we look at that credit worthiness. What have you done lately? And if you've done things the right way to rebuild it, again, you're going to be in a much better situation than you are saddled with all this debt. A debt to income ratio that is very poor.
Okay. I think you had said that you had some statistics that you wanted to share with us.
Absolutely. One of the reasons that I think it's important to talk about bankruptcy is when we look at, it's a sign of the times. We thought a couple of years ago with the pandemic, with the jobs being jobs being eliminated, people relying on credit. It was going to be a significant impact to our economy. However, it actually continued. The amount of people who filed bankruptcy was going down, until about a year ago. And last year, we saw an uptick in bankruptcy. And specifically here, like I mentioned, I'm in Southern California. We're in the quote unquote central district of California. In 2023, bankruptcy filings rose almost 22%. And so far this year, they're on track to rise and continue rising another 20% or over 20%. Down in the Southern District, which is San Diego and Imperial County, last year they rose over 23%. This year they're up over about 20%. So things are on the rise. It is becoming more of a necessity. I think because of the stigma, because of just the notion in general, or the lack of efforts by creditors to go after debt, that's now increasing. We're seeing an increase in bankruptcy. But when you talk about the debt, particularly in the CRPS context of it, really, we've got to look at those medical expenses. And I know these statistics, I did some research, getting ready, and I've given presentations on this as well. But even when we look at bankruptcy, one thing I found really, no matter the timing of everything, the amount of cases that are filed that have medical debt included is pretty consistent. Over 10 years, there was actually a study, the American Journal of Public Health, from 2013 to 2016, 2/3 of bankruptcies included medical expenses. 2023, it was reported, again, we're right at 66.5%, so still right at that 2/3. American Journal of Medicine reports 60%. So we can see the consistency of the fact that, hey, bankruptcy relief is here for those medical expenses. You have the ability. Hey, I've been put in a bad situation. My safety net has been depleted. I need some relief, and bankruptcy gives that relief. And again, the domino effect. I keep talking about that domino effect because of these expenses, and quite frankly, getting put into the situation. Medical expenses pretty much means you're not able to go out there and have that regular productivity that you're used to. So it means your income is going to be significantly decreased. Domino, domino, domino. Let's look at the credit card debt. 1999. Yeah, we go back to 1999. The credit card debt in the U.S. totaled $478 billion. In 2021, it was up to $856 billion, and last year, for the first time ever, it was over $1 trillion of debt. Q4 ended, I can read my notes here, 1.12, almost $1.13 trillion of debt, and we've seen the rate, or excuse me, the cost of living. We've seen the cost of living increase, and pay in jobs just not keeping up with that. So, which is causing that increase in credit card debt there. And even talking about, I know this is national. So looking at those top states of people that are looking at the most credit card by person, it looks like my geography is right, that northeast sector of the U.S. here. Massachusetts, New York, Maryland, Connecticut, and New Jersey, from 5 to 1. People that live there have the highest average credit card debt, followed closely, number 6, by California. So it's very prevalent out there. And again, I see as the domino effect. Medical debt, credit card debt, those are the things that are really the driving forces in filing for bankruptcy. But other reasons that people will file for bankruptcy, and that's something important to look at as well. It is those unexpected expenses. Property loss or a natural disaster having to pay a significant amount, even if you're not going into a medical debt. Okay, I have an emergency situation, I need to pay that. Divorce and separation and job loss, things that are really out of somebody's control are the reasons that we see people filing for bankruptcy. And then of course, there's that poor use of credit. But I attribute that to the fact that there's no education about how to use credit. So one of the other things to look at, poor use of credit and the fact that there's no education. Maybe you got onesie twosies in the schools or in community organizations and so forth, but really there's no mass knowledge, mass information being passed along to sound old, these generations, the current generation of kids, or even the people who are in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah. We never had it in school. We didn't have anything that taught us what a credit card was, or what interest rates were, or how to use anything. Literally no education in school about it. It was all relied on what you learned from your family.
Oh, absolutely. And then what happens is you go to college and you have the credit card company say, get this free t-shirt if you sign up for a credit card, and then you run up the credit card and you don't know what to do. You're in college, you probably don't have a job.
Yep.
You're now putting yourself, you're setting yourself up for failure. And that's really, we look at the poor use of credit. Again, it's not necessarily, really, when looking at a lot of these situations, it's beyond the control of the debtor. And they find themselves in a situation. And then there needs to be that education about why bankruptcy. I actually say bankruptcy is not a bad thing. It can be a good thing. It can help set up for the future.
Absolutely. Before talking to you, I had that feeling of the idea of bankruptcy gives me anxiety, but after talking to you, it sounds like it can be, like you said, a fresh start for people who a lot of times they get put in these positions not of their own fault. I mean, with CRPS, you end up seeing so many doctors, people end up going to emergency rooms, and you end up having these thousands of dollars of bills that show up randomly because it takes a long time for medical bills to process.
Yes, they do.
And you end up, if you don't have the money, you end up putting it on your credit card. And then, like you said, that just compounds with the interest that you're paying, end up paying so much more for so much longer, but you had no other way to do it.
Absolutely. I appreciate the discussion on this and the ability to give the education out there that bankruptcy needs to be talked about. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be shown, hey, this is an option because of these various reasons, because it's not as bad. You're not going to have such a major impact on it. And here's another reason that people are scared to file for bankruptcy and have that, oh my gosh, everybody's going to know that I filed for bankruptcy. Yeah, unless they're sitting there searching the bankruptcy database on the individual courts' websites every single day, they're not gonna know. So it's a personal thing. You're gonna be able to keep it quiet if you're, and quite frankly too, a lot of people that have filed for bankruptcy, they're able to express that, hey, I did file for bankruptcy and it was a great thing, and they're gonna help people in the future do that. They're not, it's not something you're actually gonna keep quiet.
Yeah.
It's going to say, hey, I did this, and it was a good thing.
That's awesome. A question that I ask all of our guests is that we are so appreciative that you're willing to be a resource for the foundation. And we kind of ask how you were introduced to CRPS Warriors Foundation and why you chose to be a resource.
Well, as far as my introduction to CRPS Warriors Foundation, I met Deborah Jankowski out here in Southern California. We are in various networking groups within our community, and she's in it to raise awareness, to help get the assistance that is needed to grow the foundation, to get the resources, and of course get the financial support for it as well. I was introduced to her. We were able to sit down. I learned all about the foundation. Learned all about CRPS. And the evolution over the last couple of years of what it actually means. It's coming to the forefront of people knowing, I didn't even know this disease existed, to, getting the information out there. Again, it's all about education, getting that out there. And really, it inflicts so many people out there. I jumped at the opportunity to become a resource because this is truly the people that find themselves in the situation of, I didn't know I had this disease. I didn't know I had this. I wasn't able to, this is not something that you can prepare for at all. I wasn't able to prepare for it. So I find myself in such financial constraints. Hey, there needs to be education about bankruptcy here. There needs to be that resource. There needs to be the help. If somebody calls us, I know we're listed on the CRPS Warriors Foundation website as a resource. Quite frankly, I can only help a certain number of people in Southern California because that's where we start. But if somebody goes there and finds us and calls and says, I have a question about it, we're going to, as much as we can, look at their situation. Okay, here's the information about bankruptcy that is needed, to the information about bankruptcy, the education, and help share that education. Go, okay, bankruptcy might actually be a good option.
That's awesome. Thank you. We really appreciate it. The resources aren't just doctors, but all different kinds of things can help all different parts of our lives. And the financial stress that comes with having a CRPS is gigantic. So having somebody who's able to help educate is really, really fantastic. So thank you for being a resource. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Is there anything that you want to add in information that we didn't cover that you want to include?
Oh, the catch-all. No, I think I've stressed it throughout the entire time that we've had. It's that education piece. To me, bankruptcy is not a bad word. There is a long history of bankruptcy in our country. There's long throughout history. It's even biblical. I'm not going to go in depth on all that, but the jubilee of forgiving debt, there's a long history of that. And so people have to understand that there's really no stigma attached with bankruptcy. It is an option that they really should pursue, should look at. Hey, if I qualify, how much better is my life going to be? And if they can get to that point and focus on, as far as the warriors, the CRPS warriors here, they don't have to worry about that financial stress. What's that going to do to physical health and the ability to focus on that and the ability to take certain steps, the ability to take certain actions, but they don't have that stress on them to do what they need to do to be in the best physical health that they can be in.
Absolutely. And you said that bankruptcy law is dependent on state. There might be certain things that are different depending on each state.
That's one of the quirks about bankruptcy. It is a federal law. So
Okay.
Across the country, you can file for bankruptcy. But when it comes down to various types of exemptions, that's that state law that we look
Okay.
at. And then as far as the qualification, the income levels, that varies by state as well.
Okay. And is that something that you're in Southern California, you're able to work in California? If I was looking for a lawyer, do I need to find one that is within my state?
So the federal courts are broken down by district. So here in California, I believe we have 4 districts. I am admitted, and lawyers in our firm are admitted to the central and southern districts. So if somebody, basically Southern California, contacted us, we would be able to assist them. Other states, I don't know how many districts are in other states. To be honest, as long as you contact a lawyer that you feel that can help within whatever jurisdiction that you're in, and that you feel comfortable working with and has that open line of communication, that's who you should be working with throughout the bankruptcy case. And as long as they're familiar with the court that you're going to be filing in, familiar with the way of doing things within that district. Again, things can be varied even by district. They're going to vary by state. When it gets down to the district level, it's going to vary as well.
Okay. Thank you. I think that was good to clarify because I don't have a lot of experience with lawyers personally, so I didn't know if it was something that you were able to practice all over the country or you have a district. So that's just good to know if people aren't familiar with working with lawyers.
Yeah, very good question. I mean, a lot of people will assume, hey, again, we talked about this being federal law. You're able to go ahead, and if you're admitted to the federal court now, it's still district specific where we can actually file cases.
Okay. That's good to know.
But again, if there's any questions, we've got that education. We also have a huge network of attorneys nationwide
Okay.
that we can reach out to, and we give a lot of referrals out to those that we know, like, and trust that are going to handle that can handle the cases outside of where we practice.
That's awesome. Good to know. Thank you. I think that we got a lot of information and definitely helped people see that bankruptcy isn't a bad word and try and remove that stigma and see how we can help people with their financial debt and that you're there for them. So I really appreciate your education and chatting with me today. And if you end up thinking of anything else you want to share or more education you want to share, please reach out. We'd always happy to talk to you again.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity of talking to you about it. Education. Again, it's that big component of it is the education. And if people wanted to reach out to me, the firm that I'm the co-owner of New Tomorrow Law here in Southern California, newtomorrowlaw.com. We help good people get out of debt today so they can start their new tomorrow. Glad to help where we can, discuss anybody's situation and point them in the right direction if we're not able to help them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, it was wonderful to meet you. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. It's been great being here.
Michael, we can't thank you enough for taking the time out today to share with us so much valuable information that can really benefit warriors and impact their lives in a positive way. If anybody would like to get in touch with Michael to learn more or see if he can help you in your particular situation, you can find him under the resource tab on our website, crpswarriorsfoundation.org, as well as you can find his direct contact information in the description of this episode. Our support group dates for August are going to be August 10th and August 21st. Group is open to anyone suffering from any type of chronic pain condition. They are offered at no cost and registration is open, so go ahead and sign up. If you would like to support the foundation or the podcast, please text CWF podcast to 53555. Don't forget that we have our Heyday Rockfest coming up in September. We are currently looking for donated items for our silent auction that will be held at this event. All links and contact information for donating an item for the silent auction or making a monetary donation are in this episode's description. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.